All right, welcome back to episode 2 of Extra Credit with Noah and Jason, teacher and student. So, you want to say something?
No.
You could say hello.
Alright.
Episode 1, right? Kind of gave introductions. A little all over the place, but that's us, right? We keep it natural. We're a little bit all over the place and a little bit chaotic, but that's just how we roll. I figured in this episode, I wanted to talk about dyslexia and sort of get an actual dyslexic student's take on it, right? So that's kind of what this episode's going to be about. So before we start, how you doing, bro?
Good.
Cheers. By the way, best seltzer in the game. Would you agree?
Yeah.
That's usually more enthusiastic than that. All right. So, you doing well? I don't even remember what you said.
Yeah.
Nice. What are you looking at? My mic?
Yeah.
Does it look funny?
I don't know. It's like gonna get good audio.
Let's hope so. All right. So, dyslexia. I feel like most people don't really understand what that is. And I certainly really didn't until I met you. So why don't you explain what that is in your opinion and your perspective?
Me?
Yeah, you.
You got it.
No, that's the whole point. It's you.
I can't read.
I mean, sure. I guess that's part of it. But like, okay, I'll give you an example, right? Before I really met you, started working with you, and at the school that shall not be named, I thought dyslexia was just mixing up B's and D's. And that was basically it. I feel like
that's a form of dyslexia.
I feel like it's a lot more than that, right?
Yeah.
So, help us understand.
Yeah, it's a form of not being able to read and
Okay, so obviously that's
reading.
right. You have
spelling.
You have trouble reading.
Struggle.
Trouble spelling. What else?
Struggle writing.
Okay, you trouble. Wow. Wow. Now I can't speak. You struggle with writing a little bit. Okay. So why don't we break each one of those down, right? When you say you have trouble reading, what is that? Can you try to explain that the best you can?
The brain just doesn't comprehend it.
So like you look at a word and what?
It means nothing.
It just looks like gibberish. Looks like another language.
Like a normal kid is taught.
So like when I see the letters D-O-G, I know that is dog. You, prior to being able to read, when you were still kind of really struggling with it, you would look at that and what would your brain tell you?
D-O-G.
So you knew what each letter was?
Yeah.
But where was the trouble then?
Making the sound.
So like
be able to say the word.
So like I can kind of hear the sound duh, g, right? Dog. I can hear that in my head. You can't hear that in your head?
Now I can.
Now you can, but before you couldn't.
Yeah, no.
So you'd see it and you'd be like, all right, that's a D, that's an O, that's a G, but you couldn't piece it all together.
I couldn't piece all the sounds together. I might know some of the sounds or all the sounds, but I couldn't piece them together.
Would you know what the word is though?
Sometimes from memorization, but just from like
okay, just practice, right? But sometimes you would look at a word and you'd know each letter, but you couldn't put all the sounds together, blend them, and make a full word.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the main part you struggled with.
Yeah, like I still sometimes I don't know where it's
of course.
open or whatever. I don't remember open or whatever. I just see the word open. It reminds me of like a sign or something.
So you have these associations.
Yeah.
So you might know a word not so much by its sound.
I don't know stop by just like the word stop. I know from a stop sign.
That's what I think about too, though.
Yeah.
When I see stop, I automatically think about a stop sign.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, so then you said reading, writing. How is it similar? Like, how do you struggle with
spelling? It's writing and spelling. It's not so much like writing part.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine at writing. It's being able to put the sound and like spell a word and write that down.
Okay, so if I were like spell dog, you have a hard time being like associating the letter G or a D with the sound D.
Yeah, and it's just being able to associate the right letter with the right sound.
Okay, so you'd struggle with associating Okay, I didn't know that actually. So
You
like,
know that?
I didn't know that. No.
Because like okay, like so, like the G and J can make the same sound.
Yeah, depending on what letter is next to it or something.
How am I meant to know that?
I mean, non-dyslexics just have to kind of remember that.
Exactly.
Interesting. So like, let's say you're practicing when you were younger,
Yeah.
and your teacher was like, spell top, right?
Yeah.
And you hear t. You had a hard time associating, oh, the t sound is T?
I guess kind of.
Okay.
I feel like I also just wasn't taught the right way. I feel like I could have learned how to read if I was taught the right way.
Got it. Got it. Okay, so that was your struggles with dyslexia. Now, how do you feel like you got over that? Because you can definitely read and write and spell a lot better now. If I didn't know you, right, and I was just starting to work with you, let's say right now,
It seemed like I just didn't really like reading or writing.
yeah, you would just seem like a kid who is intelligent, can definitely read and write, but just has no interest in it, right?
Well, that's true.
How did we go from like, because when I first started working with you, I definitely noticed those struggles. How did we
When
go
you first started working with me at
the school that shall not be named?
yes. Then or like when we actually started together.
Well, I mean, when we started together, we had those like 2 years of practice beforehand.
Yeah, I
Right,
could already kind of read.
We're going on 3-4 years of us practicing without them, right, on our own,
No, I think 4 years has already passed. We're going on 5, I think.
outside of the school.
I think so. Or inside of the school.
So 5 years total, 2 in the school, 3 on our own, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what was my question? How have you gone from where you were to where you are now? Like, how did that confidence build? Because I think that's important, right? Because I'll let you
I
answer.
think practice with the right curriculum. If that makes sense.
It is make sense because it is make sense. It does make sense. And I ask because so many kids struggle with dyslexia. They grow up hardly being able to know reading and writing. You having bridged the gap, like what worked for you and
Whatever that school did.
interesting. So just the constant
whatever you did.
practice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And not just basically giving me the basics of reading.
Uh-huh.
I think that's a big part too. It's like you can't just graze over it. Like
Uh-huh.
teaching a normal kid. You have to like
Really sit with them.
yeah. It's not just like teaching a normal kid, just like a public school how to
So you feel like when you're teaching a dyslexic, you have to kind of keep that in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because from my perspective, when you and I started working outside of that school, I never even considered it. The way I taught, like the way I practiced reading and writing with you,
forgot I was dyslexic.
I would have done with any kid.
Yeah.
So why was that successful? That's the mystery, right?
Just was.
Okay, that brings me into my next question. Your dad has brought up that dude's TED Talk a bunch, right?
Dude.
Dean Braglioli or something like that. Has he ever talked about that TED Talk with you? I assumed he has. He's like, this is like his favorite video in the world.
Oh, really?
Basically, this dude talks about how dyslexics have the shroud of shame. And the video is amazing, right? I mean, from a teacher's perspective, it's really helpful. I watched it like 2 years into us working together. Your dad sent it to me late. He talks about the shroud of shame, where like kids grow up with dyslexia, feeling different. Their confidence and their self-esteem is destroyed because they are always outcasted, right? They can't read and write like the quote-unquote normal kids.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel like that?
Oh yeah.
So you felt like when you were going through your school and growing up, there was like you and then everyone else in terms of your reading.
Yeah, and the worst part was when like a teacher was calling you or.
So these teachers knew you had dyslexia, right?
Yeah.
And they would still call on you?
Yeah, but
read in front of the class?
It's not like the normal school,
Uh-huh.
so it's not like.
We can't totally blame them.
No, you can blame them a lot. You can blame them a lot. It's just.
Uh-huh.
It's not like the average school though, so.
Sure.
I feel like I never went to a public school, but I think most public schools.
I mean,
somewhat help you.
you have like
Slightly
resource
more.
room,
Exactly.
but even then,
You have slightly more help
Mhm.
than just like a.
I think it depends.
School I went to.
I mean, in my experience, I went to resource room because I struggled growing up, and they had kids with all different types of, you know,
Learning
I don't want to call them, I
disabilities.
hate calling them disabilities because you're not disabled.
Learning handicaps.
Even then, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
learning, what? Said idiots?
Yeah.
We'll call it, sure, a learning handicap. And like I had one resource teacher, Miss McMahon, in the 5th grade. She was amazing. It was like 5 of us would sit down kind of at a table like this, and she would just walk around and help. Now, I don't know if she probably knew if a kid had dyslexia or not, right? But I don't know that every school has a resource room like that.
They knew I was dyslexic.
Uh-huh.
They just said, yeah, he'll learn eventually learn how to
Well,
read.
they're backwards, that
Yeah,
school.
I know. It's
I'm
Hawthorne Valley. I'll say it. I don't care.
Name drop them, Hawthorne Valley. I mean, so I bring up my experience with the resource room because I don't know that all public schools had the resources to have a program like that, you know?
I think somewhat they do more than just like.
But then how come the dyslexic are still struggling?
It's not good enough.
So what is that?
It exists, but it's not good enough, I think.
No, I think you're right. And this brings me back to, I want to get back to the guy Dean. So he talks about the shroud of shame, right? So you would say that your confidence growing up, because knowing you struggled reading, was hit, right?
Yeah. Not like confidence in life, just confidence in reading.
Confidence in school.
Yeah, yeah.
So would you say this cycle happened where, you know, your confidence is takes a hit, then you have to do all this practice, and you're struggling with the practice, which is making you feel self-conscious, and this sort of loop happens?
Well, it's kind of like they gave me homework and like practice, but like they're not teaching me how to read. How am I meant to
Yeah,
do the stuff if I'm
exactly.
if
So
I'm
more
teaching?
practice is not working if you can't read in the
Yeah.
first place.
Yeah.
So then,
I think that's also a big thing. Not a lot of people know how to teach dyslexics how to read. There's a small number that,
yeah.
and what that school that we're not gonna name
Mm-hmm.
is that small number. It's not easy to get there.
No, and I feel like you have to have the right teachers there even still, right?
Yeah.
And you have to, it only worked to a certain spot, which is
Yeah.
why your dad pulled you out, because it wasn't working
Yeah.
anymore. So then my question to you is, in your own words, what worked between you and I? Like, what did I do differently that worked? Because I'm curious from your perspective. I never asked you.
I think also what I found when I learned best was passion.
Okay.
We always do this.
We
We always
will.
talk about this.
Oh, it's
But,
so important, right?
yeah, so if you're doing something you like, I think it's easier to learn.
So the fact that we read stuff
That I liked.
that you liked, and
We also didn't even have to do with reading, just did stuff that we liked.
see, this is kind of what I was hoping you'd say. I tell so many people, like, the best way to help somebody is just get them doing things they like first and foremost, right? So why would that help you then, in your perspective? Because I could talk about it all day as a teacher, but as someone who actually got helped, like, your perspective is
I think-
golden.
Because you were able to get like down to my level.
And what do you mean?
We were like equals in that. And,
Uh-huh.
like, we got to do something that I liked.
Uh-huh.
And
Totally.
that made it just easier for me to like kind of comprehend it. You
Sure.
know, like comprehend of like because like just say like, hey, read.
Yeah.
That doesn't really work.
No. So back in the so within the passions, right? So you're like we talked about last episode, you're working on bikes, you're working on
Yeah.
stuff with your hands. We're not doing any reading when we do that. Is it fair to say that, how can I phrase this?
I mean, we are doing because it's like getting incorporated.
Totally. I mean, there's obviously reading here and there. You got to read instructions and these things, but it's not like the school shall not be named type of practice where you're just hours a day reading,
Yeah.
right? Would you say there's like an element of your confidence started to build because you're working on your
I got to do
passions,
things that I liked, yeah.
you're doing things you enjoy, which then
I think
carried
so.
over into.
Yeah.
You can disagree with me.
No, I agree with that because like I was doing things that I wanted to do, so it made it like because reading was always painful. I still hate reading,
Mm-hmm. Oh, we know.
but like if I read a bike article or something like that, that's more enjoyable just because it's something
Sure.
I like. Yeah, I think that's a big one.
So definitely reading within the realm of things you
Of
enjoy,
passion, yeah.
right? Of passion. And then just working on things you're passionate and interested in too had carry over into your reading.
Yeah.
Why do you think so? I have my assumption, but I want to hear it from your perspective.
I don't know. I've never really thought about that. I've always just kind of been like, yep, now I can kind of read.
Because your dad and I talk about this all the time. And he
we
was,
talk about a lot of stuff.
and like I tell this to other parents too. I'm just like, yeah, sitting there and doing practice is great and all, right? But there's an element of like, if they're enjoying doing other work and they're excited about learning in other areas, it has a huge carryover, right?
Mhm.
I think it's like your confidence was building, right? Here's someone who's supporting you, who is pushing you in the right way, who's like you said, sitting there leveling with you. I'm like with you. I'm not judging you. I'm like really there, guiding you, helping build your confidence. Then you're doing all this amazing stuff in your passions, which is making you feel happy, boosting your confidence in that, right? You're getting to like grow those skills. Somehow there was a carryover because we didn't do tons of just like reading practice.
We've never done like just like
No,
loads of reading practice.
but we've read books, we've read tons of articles. I mean, your reading is insanely higher. And I'll be honest, we didn't sit there and just do practice. We've never really done that.
The most practice we've done is reading a book. That's the closest we've come to doing like the most.
And I guess the GED stuff where we have to read these horrible passages.
That's recent. That's not like before.
Yeah. So in the last 3 years,
We haven't done really practice.
and you've noticed your reading's better, right?
I mean, I can read a book now. I can read a book before.
So, the question then, is like here, why? Like, how did that happen? How did we not really practice reading, but yet it went up?
I think it's the passion, doing things that you like to do. 'Cause it's like kind of like in life, if you're not doing things you don't want to do,
Yeah.
you're not gonna enjoy doing it. You can still do it, but you're not gonna enjoy doing it.
I think that's very true. So you think
I didn't enjoy reading, but I was also doing something that I enjoyed doing, so it made reading almost enjoyable in a way.
Sure. No, I think I totally get it. I mean, I've made you read poems, obviously.
That I hate, yeah.
Even though we talked about we both don't really like poetry. I've made you read articles and stuff that I thought were good for you, but you didn't particularly care for them. But somehow your drive to read them was higher.
Yeah.
So are you implying that having a lot of school be stuff you enjoy makes the not so enjoyable stuff easier to get through?
100%.
So it's part have school be mostly good because then the stuff you don't enjoy, like
It's gonna be it's worth it.
because you know there's fun stuff around the
it's worth
corner.
it.
And then I think this, which is just my conclusion. Your dad and I talk about this all the time, and when we have him on, which is probably next episode, I think he'll agree with me. You're building so much confidence in those passion areas, right? Because we're challenging you in such a positive way, like building the engine. Remember how difficult that was, that little DC motor?
Yeah.
But it was fun. We enjoyed it. It was such a difficult challenge. It took us 12 hours to build that thing.
Research and all that stuff.
It's building our confidence.
Yeah.
Like, wow, we can actually do this. And then, like you said, we're researching, we're reading,
Yeah.
we're doing all these things. So if we have,
It almost didn't feel like school when you're just reading to do something.
absolutely,
You're just reading.
you're just reading. So something about,
Reading for school is almost like
yeah, it's painful. So something about building our confidence and our enjoyment in things we like doing carried over into the dyslexia stuff.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree, 100%. So, if you had advice to give to maybe a parent who is like has a kid like you, struggling or was like you, struggling with dyslexia, and they're like, I don't know what to do, what would you tell them? Put you on the spot.
let them do things they want to do.
Okay. And she's like, what does that mean? Or
Passions.
I don't know my kid's passion.
Ask them. Quite simple. Ask
You
them.
think it's just that simple?
Yeah, ask them.
Uh-huh. So get them doing projects and learning about their passions.
Yeah.
And they'll...
And then start doing that.
Mm.
Focus first on the passion part and then start doing the school.
Because remember, we worked on like that train project for like 3 months.
Before we really started doing any school.
Before we really... I mean, when we just went into homeschooling and
Yeah.
it was the same type of scenario.
Yeah.
And then we took that test at the end of last year and you scored it like 3-4 grade levels higher.
Yeah.
With no actual practice.
No.
I've never made you read out of workbooks. We don't have any dyslexic program.
No.
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and be like, this method was going to work for everyone.
No.
But I think there's something to it, perhaps. Yeah. Interesting. All right, man. Any other thoughts? No. Any other closing words of wisdom you want to leave people with? Like you tell me, what's the quote of the day? What's the final words of the day? I'm going to throw you on the spot. Anything?
put me on the spot for
I got
quotes.
one.
Quotes just come to me.
Yeah, it's a great day
You know.
to be Noah. Insert your own name, and those are the words to live by. All right. Adios. We'll see you for episode 3.